The time is 7:04 p.m. Can we all stand for a pledge of allegiance?
I
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Indivisible.
Okay, Sherry, can you do a roll call for me?
Yep. Joe Souza. I'll give him a minute, actually. Hold on.
Millie.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Sorry, that was me.
Okay.
My 2-year-old's running about.
Joe Strom.
Present.
Sherry Ockery, present. Thor Ockery.
Present.
Dan Darren.
Here.
John Edwards.
Present.
Tom Haley.
Present.
Cynthia Isherwood.
Present.
Mike Janik.
Present.
Judy Jones.
Present.
Dave Perry.
Okay. Agenda item number 4 is a presentation by the solicitor on the OMA and APRA. Mr. Solicitor, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to participate in this meeting tonight. My name is Mike Marcello. For those who don't know me, I am the town solicitor for the town of Tiverton and have been there for about a year now. So I'm really excited that the board wanted to have a little presentation on the Open Meetings Act and the APRA. I'm going to focus mostly tonight on open meetings, and then we'll get into the APRA a little bit because that doesn't really apply that much. Well, it applies to you, but the documents that you have for various reasons will all be public records, and I'll explain why in a second. But anyway, through the clerk's office today, I did send kind of an outline of the presentation, or actually the actual presentation. I don't know if everybody got it. If you didn't, I can share the screen. Can everyone see that? Nope, hold on. Let me do this. Oh, hold on. Can everyone see that? It says Open Meeting Act Basics. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is really going to be like a 30,000 overview of the Open Meetings Act. And I would really encourage you. I think the town administrator sent out a link. Every year, the Attorney General's office hosts a seminar, panel discussion on the Open Meetings Act and APRA, which you can view on their website. And it's very informative, and it has some stuff that probably doesn't relate to you, but it's a good learning tool as well. So at the very basic level, the Open Meeting Act is governed. There's a couple typos in this memo, and I apologize, but the Open Meeting Act governs public bodies in Rhode Island, and it basically sets out the framework and how public bodies are to conduct their business. And the purpose of the Open Meetings Act is to make sure, as stated in the law, that public business being conducted in a public forum and an open and public transparent manner, so that the public can understand what's going on in their community and at all levels of government. So importantly, however, it only applies to what is determined under the law to be a public body. So a public body, as defined in the law, is, as I state right here, is a department, agency, commission, committee, board, council, bureau, or authority, or any subdivision thereof of state or municipal government. So lucky you, as the budget commission, because you are a chartered municipal body. In other words, you're in the charter. You have a very specific purpose. You as a group meet the definition of a public body. So therefore, you come under the provisions of this act. So you're required by law to follow the provisions of this act in everything that you do. Let me give you an example of not a public body. So when the town administrator meets with his department heads to go over budgets or issues that he may be dealing with, that's not a public body, because the town administrator is one person and his administrators and those people who work under him are not public bodies. The town administrator has the authority to make a decision on his own. So he's not a public body. Likewise, when he meets with, an employee of the city or the town. That's not a public body. So public bodies are groups like yourself, the budget committee, zoning board, planning board, recreation committee, art committee, things that are given specific functions and have specific duties. So for purposes of from this, just assume, because you are a public body. However, it only applies when the public body is meeting. So leads to the next question is, when are you meeting? Well, you're meeting when there's a quorum. So you're, by charter, I think you're a member, 11 member. So it is when 6 members are meeting, because it's a simple majority. And when you're meeting to conduct official business or anything that you have control over. So your charter specifically sets out what your powers and duties are under section 703. So when you're doing anything that relates to 703 is set forth in your charter, and there are 6 of you present, that's a meeting. And you've got to conform yourself to the requirements of the Open Meetings Act, which we'll get into a second. So it doesn't matter if you call yourself a workshop or a meeting or a work session. If you are there to do anything related to 703, even if you're just discussing something, that's a meeting. Now, so you got to be, again, just to repeat, so you got to be a quorum and you have to be conducting business. Now, let's say that 6 of you go out to dinner and you just, you're a bunch of friends and you're just a small town and you're all friends, you've been friends for a while, you just go out to dinner. Now, it looks like you might be having a meeting about the budget committee, but if you're just talking about the weather, the sports, whatever, you're okay. You can do that, but you've got to make sure that you're not talking about business. Mm-hmm. So you can get together at a coffee shop with your friends and other committee members, even if there's 6 of you, and you can meet. But it's not a meeting because you're not talking about town business. My recommendation is, because perception is reality, don't do it. Right? Don't gather with a large group of people of this committee outside in public or anywhere at someone's house, because it's going to look suspicious even if you're not conducting a meeting. So again, you've got to be a quorum and you've got to be conducting official business. Now, you got to be aware of rolling quorums. A rolling quorum is when, and people like to say it's, I don't know if people are, I'm sure you guys remember the old shampoo commercial. I think it was Brett. I told 2 friends and he told 2 friends and they told 2 friends and so on and so on and so on. So if a member of the committee calls another member of the committee and says, "Hey, I'm thinking of cutting the solicitor's budget by 50%. What do you think of that?" "Oh, I think that's a great idea, but let me talk to another committee member." Okay, so that person calls the other committee member. So now we got 3 people discussing maybe a cut of the solicitor's budget. That person says, "Yeah, I'm on board with that." Okay, well, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to call, Joe. Joe, do you think we should cut the solicitor's budget? Yeah. So soon, all of a sudden, we're having a decision is being made, even though it's 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. But you're getting what they call a rolling quorum. So you're kind of building a consensus by talking to one another. And at some point, you're over the number of 6, and you just decided something outside of a official meeting, and that's a rolling quorum. So my advice to all the boards and commissions is, do not speak about town business, budget business outside of these official meetings. Don't do it. Don't be tempted to do it. It's just not worth it. And again, your goal is to have public hearings and public meetings in the public view. That goes for emails. There's always emails are very easy to violate this rule. So say the chair sends out an email, I'm thinking to everybody on the board, I'm thinking of cutting the solicitor's budget by 50%. Someone hits reply all. You just violated the Open Meetings Act, because you are now discussing a business outside of the public view, something that you have a purview over. So now you're having this email discussion. So my advice is, you have a meeting agenda, you have meeting dates, limit yourself to talking about town business at these meetings, budget business at these meetings, and you won't have a problem. I did have the pleasure of watching the last 2 meetings the other night of your meetings, and one of the issues that came up is about subcommittees. So say this group decides to send 3 people or 2 people or even one person to, I want you guys to look at the school budget. You can certainly create subcommittees, but even those subcommittees are subject to the open meetings law. So that means that they would have to post an agenda. They have to have they have to post an agenda. They have to comply. They have to take minutes of their subcommittee. So all that applies. So you can't avoid the open meetings act by going into subcommittees. All right. Does anybody have a question about that? Anything I said?
Yeah, well, we didn't propose subcommittees.
What are you talking about?
We did not propose to go into subcommittees to look at the budget. The proposal was that a couple of people here, a couple of people there, if interested in a certain budget, they could look at it and come back and make recommendations. We didn't talk about any voting, any minute taking, or anything. It was merely that they took interest in that particular budget and wanted to present more information than we might have heard. So it was just for information. It was not, we didn't talk about forming subcommittees. We understand subcommittees are regulated just like regular committees. But the idea was just if a couple of people wanted to take a particular interest in that budget, that they could report back to the committee on it. So I don't know if that qualifies as a subcommittee. I don't think it does.
Well, you got to be careful because if you got two people talking about a budget and they start talking to two other people, then they talk to two other people.
I understand the role in quorum. But they would address the full body and it would be on the agenda as when we did talk about it. So we understood that. So I just wanted to be clear. We weren't even talking about subcommittees.
All right. Well, I heard the term subcommittee mentioned. So
Point of information, Darren.
Yes.
Point of information, Darren. Attorney, is it Marcello? I'm sorry.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Two questions. As I look on page 6 of your agenda, it mentions Microsoft free offerings. For what it's worth, or for what attorneys call S and giggles. I have one dedicated email account that I will use only for official business in regard to the budget committee. But on page 6, it mentions Microsoft free offerings. That presumes that I can use my own Excel spreadsheet. There's not any official Microsoft Office account that I need to use. It's down the last page. It says Microsoft free offerings.
I don't, for some reason, my page 6 is not coming off. So I'm not, that's why I'm seeing that. I think that comes from the best practices from the state that I just was sharing with you.
Okay, no problem. It basically says for businesses, municipalities, K-12 and other entities, Microsoft's providing 6 months of Office 365 tools for free. I'm presuming that's not an official Excel and MS Office that everybody needs to use.
Yeah, I think you're right. I get it. That comes from the Department of Business Regulation, Department of Administration. When COVID hit, they sent out these broad frameworks. So you probably are able to sign up for that. But
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and one other question, if I might, Darren again. You mentioned that if someone sends you said email can be problematic. If someone sends an email saying yada yada yada, and you do reply all, then you violated the open meeting law. What if I reply and say we cannot do this? It violates the open meeting law. Does that violate the open meeting law?
Technically, yes, yes.
Right.
But it's a good defense. Like, hey, I really don't want to violate the only exception. And let me be clear: the only exception to that rule is when the committee is allowed to email or talk to one another when they're trying to set dates for their next meeting. So that can be done outside of an official meeting. But you can, so if you get an email from the chairman, hey, it's snowing tomorrow night and I got to cancel the meeting. Can we meet, the following week? These are the next days I'm available. Just hit reply all. You can do that, but that's it. That's the only exception. You can communicate and talk off the record about setting dates for future meetings, but you cannot discuss business.
Okay, and so it'd be better if I receive an email purporting to discuss official business, if I may, then it would be a prudent man or woman would simply not acknowledge the email.
Correct.
Thank you.
You really shouldn't be getting any type of email like that, unless unless you're just getting information. Here's the budget we're going to discuss tonight. See you tonight. That's okay. Obviously, things are a little different because of COVID, but we'll get to that in a second. but not the substantive things that I just told you. So,
If I might, one more question, Dan, Darren.
Yeah.
Presumably, and I've read very briefly, presumably between the YouTube recording, the official agenda, the minutes, and any other documents that we share, which are part of an agenda, all or official communications in some way, all of those represent the entire set of documents that would normally be necessary in open meeting terms. Is that correct?
correct. And anything that you may bring to the table and pass out to the members of your committee. So say you did a little research on the police department budget and you want to hand out a paper, that as soon as you hand it out to the rest of the committee, that becomes a public record. And
Okay.
therefore it becomes part of the official record of the body.
Yeah. Being slightly flip when I sent out an email advising people of my email account dedicated to budget committee business, I slightly flip fashion, I said, this is in compliance with the presidential record of SAC, but the thought and the intent and the spirit is there. So thank you.
You're welcome. So now that we know that you're a public body, that you have to, when you're discussing official business, you have to do it at a meeting when there's a quorum present, that you wear your rolling quorums. What other requirements of the law? Well, the Open Meetings Act requires that a public body post on an annual basis its meetings for the year. So I know you had a discussion at the last meeting about what your dates are going to be, and that's fine. I don't think you actually voted on it. I didn't appear to be a vote on it. It actually just a discussion on the agenda, didn't say vote. But at some future agenda, I would recommend that you actually vote on those dates that you're going to meet, that you plan to meet, and that notice has to be filed with the Secretary of State so that everyone knows in the future what the dates are going to be. Now that can change. You can obviously amend that, but it's, if you know for the next 6 months you're going to be meeting on the Thursday, you should put those dates down.
We did vote on that, Mike. We did vote on our calendar and it is already posted.
Okay, thank you.
One last point of information or question, Dan, Darren, if I might. Oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. Give me a minute, I'll come right back. I know. I was thinking about this today. Presumably the public is allowed access. And if we were meeting in person prior to COVID or in the absence of COVID, I imagine there might here and there be people who would be physically attending the budget committee meeting. Do we have any indication that any citizens other than the board members have or are attending these meetings? And presumably, is there any public comment period, or if anyone wants to address the board, do they have to file as for an agenda item?
So whether there's a public comment period is up to you. That's up to the committee or the chairperson. There's no requirement under the law that the public comment be allowed at a meeting. That's up to you. But and they don't have to submit anything in advance if they do allow. But if you put it on the agenda, you have to obviously allow people to do it. The tricky part is right. If during COVID, pre-COVID, you could just come to a meeting and say, I don't like this. I want to cut. You guys are spending too much money, or you're not taxing enough here. There are people who are participating in this meeting. Like you can see that if there's people just watching. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
But I don't know. I'm new to this budget committee, so I don't know if you will usually during your deliberations at some point, as you maybe get closer to finalizing a budget, whether you actually allow public comment. But that's up to you. But if you are going to allow public comment, it's got to be on the agenda. Public comment period.
So we couldn't have a public comment tonight.
Correct.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Mr. Solicitor, I believe John has a question.
John, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. So since you mentioned the word voting, I have to ask, under the COVID rules, do we need to do a full roll call vote for every vote that goes through, or what we did last meeting with the unanimous consent? Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I'm okay with the unanimous consent. It's, so here's the problem. So we'll get to COVID in a second. Because of the COVID rules, we're Zooming this meeting and we're assuming that everyone is watching, but there may be people who are dialing in who can't actually see the video. So they have a right to know who's voting for what and who's talking for what. So the best practice is, so when this is Michael Marcello, if I make a motion to add $2,000 to the recreation budget. So you're supposed to, the best practice is to announce your name, because you got to assume that not everyone can see what's happening. There might be people on the phone that can't, not visual, they can't see it. The rules under code, the rules under COVID is yes, that all votes need to be roll call, but you're interpreting unanimous consent. So any member can object. If that person objects, then that means that whatever you're asking can't go forward. So if that person says I object, I'm a no, then that person should announce that. And then I'm okay with the unanimous consent as long as the person who might object to it. In other words, if no one objects, that means everyone is voting yes.
Okay. So point of information or question in that regard. So it was actually, and I think you've answered it, Darren again. I was uncertain about the procedure, given that from time to time we might choose to ask for unanimous consent. And so does one ask for unanimous consent? And if there's no objection, then that is presumed to be, it would seem to me that somehow there has to be some positive acknowledgement.
You could do that. I mean, I'm not, so the would say, the chair would say, okay, well, we're going to pass this, I'm going to pass this upon unanimous consent. Are there any objections? Hearing no objection, the motion, the matter passes with everyone voting in the affirmative, and that the minutes will reflect that.
Thank you.
That's the way I understood it. So
yeah. But as long as you say it, and then the minutes reflect it.
Yeah. Of course,
because not everyone might be there, right? You have an 11-member committee. I think so. You might not have everybody. Good.
A point of information question, Dan Darren. I'm sorry. Am I interrupting someone else?
No, go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead, Dan.
As I read these, the open meeting laws, it says that anytime the meeting is interrupted for any reason, for one person or whatever, and no disrespect to any particular individual, but Joe tends to get frozen a lot. So it seems like we need to state that somehow every time it happens.
Yeah, we'll get that to COVID. So yes, because of technology, if someone's getting frozen out, they can't hear or whatever, you need to stop. You really should stop the meeting until everyone can participate. I know, but it does happen. No question about it. Again, that's a best practice. That's not in the open meeting law, but that's just a best practice under COVID.
Thank you.
All right, so we talked about when you're meeting. So the requirement, you said you posted the dates for the rest of the year. That's great. And then obviously the next requirement is, now that you posted the dates for the meeting, 48 hours before those scheduled regular meetings, you have to post a supplemental notice, again, with the Secretary of State's and in one business location. And I highlighted it there. It tells you what the supplemental notice has to include: the following information: the date the notice was posted, the time and place of the meeting. And again, because of COVID, really, the place of the meeting is really, we're doing this online, and we can give you some info. I would recommend that you copy the town council's meeting notice for that, to tell you where, because you're not really meeting in a place. Everyone's meeting at their own home, right? So it's basically a Zoom meeting. And a statement specifying the nature of the business to discuss, basically what's on the agenda. This is the most tricky part, a statement of the specifying the nature which is to discuss. I did look at your agendas. They're pretty good. They're pretty thorough. So the issue is, what does adequate supplemental notice mean? And basically you have to assume that you know nothing about, you're new to Tiverton, and you have no idea what the Tiverton Budget Committee does or what they're going to do. And I just go online and I say, what do these guys do? So I go pull up their agenda. I've got to be able to see, as Joe Public, say, well, what are these guys going to do tonight? What are they discussing? So tonight we know we're getting an overview of the Open Meetings Act. That's pretty clear, APRA, and other issues. And so you've got to be specific enough so that an average person, when reading the agenda, would know, would know what's going on. So I am a stickler for this, because I believe that the more specific you get, the better off, and it helps inform people, and also stays away from any kind of complaints. The Supreme Court says the notice provided by the town council, the notice must fairly inform the public under the totality of circumstances of the nature of the business to be conducted, in addition to satisfying the date and time requirements. So you're going to, under the totality of circumstances, the nature of business to discuss. You have a very limited purview of what you actually do. You propose budgets, and you look at budgets, you cut budgets, and you add to budgets, or whatever. So most things on your agenda are pretty good as to what. But I gave you an example. A general statement: we're going to vote on the budget. That's not good enough, right? It's just not, doesn't What budget? You're voting on the town budget, the school budget, the fiscal year 2020 budget? What budget are you voting on? That's not a good thing. But discussion, more specific, which would pass muster, a discussion and vote on the proposed fiscal year 2020 budget of the police department as submitted by the town administrator in the amount of $1 million. I'm making this number up, obviously. Possible additions or cuts to the same. So what does that tell you? That you're going to be voting on the fiscal 22 proposed police budget as proposed by the town manager. You're saying what the budget was, and the committee could add or subtract to the same. So you're looking at that agenda, boy, I know what's going on. So I know that you have a lot of departments that you go through like at each meeting. And so that's what I would like to see as far as what that notice is about, to make sure that you're complying. That's the trickiest thing where most open meeting complaints come from, that the agenda is not specific enough to let you know what's going on. And there's a difference between writing discussion, because if you just put discussion on there, you can only discuss it. You can't make any final actions. But you put discussion and vote, now we know the public that you actually may be making a decision on something that's on the agenda. So I would put discussion and vote on everything, unless you really know you're just going to have a discussion about something. Any questions on that? But I did look at your agendas. They're pretty good. They're very good. The more I call it the Marcello rule. Mr. Edwards knows all about this. The more specific you can get, the better off you're going to be. So err on the side of giving too much information, not little. Now there was a discussion at your meeting whether you could add something that's not on the agenda, and the answer is yes. This board could add something on the agenda by majority vote of the board. So in other words, say that you're posting your posted agenda says something about the school department, and you're really going to focus on the school department, but you have some extra time and you think you might want to add maybe discussion about the recreation. So you can add by majority vote. Hey, I want to add a discussion about the recreation budget. Someone has to make a motion to add it. The majority has to agree to add it. It becomes added. The key is it's only up there for discussion. You can't vote on anything, but you can just discuss the recreation budget. If it was an emergency, in other words, if it was like something you had to act on quickly, say that a wall collapsed and you had to have a emergency something, you need to get money, or you need to pass a budget something really quickly, you could do that. But I can't imagine that something before the budget committee would it be an emergency?
Not in our purview.
Not in your purview, correct. So, but you can add. But again, try not to don't abuse that. If you have an agenda, you kind of know what you have to do. It really should be used sparingly to add something to the agenda.
Well, I think the reason we did it last meeting is because we forgot to put all of Joan's budget. It was our mistake. But
yeah,
again, we didn't vote on it. We are going to vote on
the
meeting.
Yeah, so you can't add it, and I gave you the law underneath. So that's kind of that tells you what the agendas have to look like. It tells you got a yearly notice and then supplemental notice, and it's got to be 40 hours before the meeting, and it tells you where the meeting's going to be posted. It's going to be posted on the Secretary of State's office. It's going to be posted where you normally meet. Because we're meeting virtually, I would just put the notice. I would just tack a notice, send the notice to the town clerk's office, and have them posted internally there. Because there's really no place to post it physically, because we're not meeting at the physical place. Dan, you have a question? I see your hands up.
Is my hand still up? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
No problem.
Apologize.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yep.
I believe Sherry has a question.
Oh, Sherry, go
Mr.
ahead.
Solicitor.
Yep. So my question was just, so as the secretary again, so you were talking about giving more details. So right now I have discussion and vote like on number 11 for civic appropriations. Are you wanting me to, put what things are in the civic appropriations section of the budget to give more detail? So it just helps me to understand. Are you wanting me to give, so like under civic appropriations, we have several different line items that we vote on. So normally in a non-COVID year, we would be inviting people to come talk about like for our boards and commissions. But last year we did not. I did not add public comment yet to the agenda. I was planning on it the next time, to see kind of where the committee, asked the committee where we were wanting to go with that. But I just wanted to see, so when we have a little section of the budget we're working on, should I give more detail about that section on
Yeah,
the?
so I would say, civic appropriation as proposed in the fiscal 22 town administrator's budget. Then if you want to put the total number that's there, you might want to do that to, give people more information.
Okay.
Yeah, more information is better. I don't think you have to list every one, but so people can, figure out what you're doing.
Obviously, that it's not, easy when you're trying to do all of that stuff. So, I mean, there's more chance of you messing up too when you're putting a lot of stuff in there. So,
Right.
Okay.
I mean, you can also just attach, if you wanted to just attach that budget to the agenda so people could actually see it, so they'll know what it is, that proposed section, that's okay
a
too.
great idea.
You
Okay.
can do that. You could just put, see attached exhibit A or something like that. So you don't have to, so you know exactly what they're talking about. Again, the goal is to be transparent. We want to know people. All right, so we talked about adding stuff to the agenda, which I think everyone understands, and we talked about the minutes. So now, because you're a public body, you have to actually take minutes of your meeting. And the minutes have to have at least the following information under the Open Meetings Act. The date and time and place of the meeting. Those people who are there and not there, so roll call. Any votes taken at that meeting. So all votes, any votes taken, even if it's unanimous consent. Unanimous consent is a vote, so chair asks for unanimous consent to approve the minutes of the following meeting. No objection being heard. Minutes were approved by unanimous consent. That's okay. So, but that's a vote, right? It's a form of vote. Any other information related to the business of the public body that any member of the public body requests to be included or reflected in the minutes. So that means any member can say, Madam Chair, Madam Secretary, I would want, I want to note my, my strong objection to decreasing the solicitor's budget by $100,000. Noted. I want that noted.
Mike, I do have one quick question about that. So Robert's rules does not call for minutes to have to say who seconded the vote. The town hall does put that in. Is that required?
Yes.
So you do put a second. So even though Robert's rules doesn't call for it, you do.
Well, a motion, Robert's rules requires you, if you're voting to, you should have the second, you need a second to move something. So you need that needs to be recorded as well.
Right. No, but I mean, Robert's rules actually says that you have to put who made the motion, but that you don't actually have to list the person's name who seconded the motion.
I would put the second.
All right. Just asking.
Yeah. Okay, then, so, minutes are not a transcript of the meeting. So, they don't have to be a transcript, but, any votes that are taken, any motions, you should try to get the motion down as best you can. So now that you have the minutes, when do they have to be filed? Well, because you're a public body, they have to be filed within
2 weeks.
Well, there's 2 steps, actually. Any votes taken at the public meeting have to be available within 2 weeks of the vote. So you take a vote tonight on something, the public has a right to view that vote within 2 weeks of today's meeting. So that would be 2 Thursdays from now. So it would be with the town clerks. No one really follows this. They just kind of wait to so this is really hyper technical, but technically you're supposed to have any votes taken available at the previous meeting available within 2 weeks. So, but generally you're probably meeting every 2 weeks anyway, so you're going to be able to approve those minutes, and those minutes are going to be on file anyway. Unofficial minutes have to be available within 35 days of the meeting. So in other words, you have a meeting tonight, you're not going to meet for another 45 days. You've got to have you've got to post your unofficial meetings. That doesn't really apply to you because I saw your schedule. It looks like you're meeting every 2 weeks or every week, actually.
Every week.
So you're going to be approving. You're going to be approving those minutes right along. Those minutes should be done at the, unless you give the chairperson, the secretary, the ability to vote to give them extra time to complete the minutes. Those minutes should be available at the next regularly scheduled meeting. And once they're approved and they become official. And once they're official, they got to be posted on the Secretary of State's website. And I think you guys are doing that. I've seen some. So that's not really a problem. Now, go ahead.
A point of information question, Dan, Darren. So presumably, one of the first items on an agenda for any meeting. So, for instance, tonight's, although we haven't, maybe not have done that yet, is to approve minutes of prior meeting. Would that be, best practice for meeting policy, if you will?
Yeah, that should be the first thing on the agenda. Approve minutes of the prior meeting, and then I would list the meeting date. So what the meeting was. So what the date of the minutes that you're approving.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so pre-COVID. So what we're doing right now is totally illegal, but for COVID. The Open Meetings Act did not allow for telecommunic communication or conferencing for a meeting, for an open meetings, unless you were in the military or you had or you had a disability that required. So what we're doing now was completely illegal. You couldn't have these kind of electronic meetings. However, this part of the law has been suspended by the governor by Executive Order number 46, which allows you to have participate in a meeting electronically. Let me go to that 1 second. I think that may have been attached, but it didn't get attached to my copy that I sent myself, so I can't figure out why. Let me go back to my screen. I can find it. Just try it again. Hold on a second, I'm sorry. Here we go. So this is Executive Order 46. I know Mr. Souza is going to ask me, well, it says it expired as of July 12th, but this has been renewed every month, and it's current till February 4th. I can't hear you, Mr. Souza.
That's probably a good thing.
All right. So anyway, so if you look, open meetings, public bodies conducting meetings as those terms as defined may continue to be relieved from the prohibitions regarding telephonic or electronic communications to conduct meetings. So what we're doing is completely illegal because the governor said we can do so, and she suspended that provision of the law. However, we are required, if we're going to do so, we have to what they call adequate alternative means of public access, and it tells you what that is. So it means measures that provide transparency and permit timely and effective public notice to deliberations. That it can include public access through telephone, internet, audio, video conferencing, or any other technology that enables the public body to clearly follow what's going on. That's what we're doing here. Zoom. We're not only Zooming this, but if you didn't want to Zoom in, you could go to the town's website and watch this on YouTube, I think, as it's live. So this is what's allowed. The caveat is that even if we were meeting in person, if you decided, you know what, I can't stand the Zoom, we're going to meet, we'll be 6 feet apart, you still have to allow other people to Zoom into the meeting as if they were there. So unfortunately, the town of Tiverton doesn't have the ability to have a hybrid meeting, what we call. So in other words, some people there, some people in a room, and some people want to, participate remotely, and then people want to. So no matter what we do, you still have to have the public ability to come in and see what we're doing. And so that's kind of why Zoom has made it easier. That's why everyone does pretty much in Tiverton exclusively Zoom, because it makes it a lot easier. And then here's just some more of the requirements of the subservice that you can't have. You can't force someone to pay for a service to view the meeting, and we don't have that. So we're complying with this pretty strictly. So if you're having public comment, you have to allow the person to participate through Zoom or through telephone or whatever when you get to that point in the meeting. So even if you guys were meeting in person at the library or something like that, you still have to allow, while we're under COVID, you still have to allow the public to participate electronically. Now, if you scroll up here, this is the link that gives you the best practices. I don't know if you're seeing that. It's not found. Oops, I'm sorry about that. That kind of gives you the best practices of how to conduct a Zoom meeting electronically. That is, that tells you, like what I told you, when you're talking, please identify yourself. So this is Michael Marcello. I'm giving an overview of the Open Meetings Act. I'm Michael Marcello. I might make a motion that we adjourn this meeting, stuff like that. Just assume that people may be listening on phone. We can tell, like I can tell right now that the 3 people who are watching this on Zoom, I cannot tell how many people may be on the phone. I don't think there's anybody on phone. And I don't know how many people may be watching live stream, which obviously live stream you can see. And that's kind of it in a nutshell. There is a provision to you guys, the provision for the Open Meetings Act to you guys to have closed executive sessions, but because of your purview, there's under no circumstances could I anticipate that you as a committee would have to meet behind closed doors outside of public view. That's just not something that you're dealing with. So everything that you do really needs to be open and recorded and live. Any questions? If you approach it that everything should be open, that you want the public to see what's going on, you won't mess up. Just assume that you want to be as open and as transparent as possible and err on the side of openness. Always err on the side of openness and you won't mess up. Any questions? Don't see any. Mr. Souza, do you see any hands?
Thank you.
You're welcome, Dan. Nope. Okay. I didn't really spend a lot of time on the APRA because that doesn't really, APRA is, so everything that you guys, everything that's submitted to you, everything that you rely upon at your meetings, anything that you may distribute amongst yourselves, everything that I just sent to you tonight, there's a provision of the APRA law that says anything that a public body uses in its deliberations or is passed out at a public meeting, it becomes public. So that's really, I mean, there's really no surprise there. So, if Mr. Souza has a proposal and he writes down, his analysis of the school budget and he passes it out to the rest of the committee, that becomes a public record. You need to preserve that, and that's where we're going, So your agendas are public, the minutes become public, anything that you rely on, anything you're passing out, that's all public. Again, if you were to violate what I just told you and send an email to one another about an agenda item, that's going to become public. I mean, about an issue, all those emails are going to be made public. So my best advice to you is you've been elected to this board of 11 members to just put together a budget. You have a forum to do so. Use the forum that you're given. It's a pain in the neck, I get it, but remember, you're doing it because you want it to be open and transparent, and you don't want anyone to think that decisions are being made behind the scenes. So if you just remember that, you should be all set. You should have no problems. I'm proud to say that as the solicitor, we haven't had any successful open meetings complaints since I've been the solicitor. I take it seriously. Some people think it's a joke, but it's something serious to take. You do want the public to have confidence in what you're doing. And the only way to do that is make it open and transparent. They may not agree with you, but that's another story.
All right.
All right.
Are we ready to move on to agenda item 5? Were there any other questions on agenda item 4? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 5. It was questions and discussion by committee members for solicitor regarding casino ordinance and restricted account per last meeting's discussion. We had talked in the last meeting about the casino money, and I'd said that I wanted to propose a resolve. So I'm just going to read it real quick. This was my draft. I'm sure it's going to have to be changed, but resolve that all casino revenue received in the fiscal year 21-22 from the state of Rhode Island will be placed in a restricted account to be used for capital expenses under the direction of the town council. My intent is to take the casino money, not put it back into the budget, but to put it into that restricted account so that when we do receive the revenue, we can do some paving or purchases. Council seems to have the ability to set the priority goals. So that was my thought, that we would have the council be responsible for that portion of the capital. And again, it's going to be based on what we receive. Because we have no idea how much we're gonna receive. It just seems that, we don't want to spend it before we get it, so wanted to
So,
throw that at you and have your opinion on
yeah,
that.
so I haven't seen your resolution, so I'd like to see that before I give a formal opinion, but I will tell you that right now, that ordinance is in place, and that ordinance is, that place, because that ordinance is in place, that money is completely restricted now.
Well,
So-
I think we have an issue there
Hold on,
because,
let me finish. So that money is restricted now by the council, that ordinance is in place, and therefore it is, again, I want to see what your resolution, but that my opinion is that money is off limits to you until such time as the council decides to change that. They have the ability to restrict funds coming in, and that's what they did. But actually, what they just did, what the ordinance currently says, is currently what you actually propose to do. So,
well, the reason, let me tell you why I'm doing that, and I'll read section 1214 of our charter. Fees collected by the town. All fees, penalties, payments, and miscellaneous sources of revenue, including but not limited to vending machines, copy machines, and recreation. This is telling us that all revenue, the key is all revenue. So the council doesn't have the authority to restrict that.
well,
It's not in their powers and duties, and if you read our charter, the word all is all revenue. And that's my point. So I think we're well within our means to put a resolve in.
all I can tell you is that the resolve that you just read to me, which I have not seen, it does the same thing that the ordinance does. So the ordinance restricts that money.
But the difference is, the people vote on resolves. We restrict campaign funds. We restricted money for the industrial park. But it was all done through resolve, and we renew those resolves each year because of the way the charter lays it out. So if the charter says all revenue, then where is the council getting these powers? It doesn't say anywhere in here, except for when the council decides to do something different. There's no exceptions.
You may have a dispute of what the all revenue means, and that's a legal dispute, but there's opinion rendered prior to me that casino money is not considered revenue. I'm not going to get into that right now, but I can just tell you that your resolve basically does what the current ordinance does.
And
So
it's in compliance with the charter.
Point of order, if I might.
Yeah.
I'd like to move that this discussion be indefinitely postponed.
Well, hearing no second, we'll continue.
I second. Joe, I second. And I'm saying that the reason is, if we already have an ordinance that addresses this, we're not the body that is going to address this. It's going to be the town council with the solicitor at whatever point. All is what it says, but yeah, thank you. It may say all, but there can be conditional restrictions on anything.
So you're
And
telling me
as
it's
long as they're placed
is
and legally.
depends on what the meaning of is. I mean, come on. The word all is pretty clear. The word all is pretty clear.
I think Robert's rules means
It's
we
not
have to
going to
go
be
to a
decided
vote
here, Joe.
when a vote to table is
I think
put
you need.
forward. I think we
you need to make it an agenda item.
When it
for
was
the town
motioned in
council to deal
second,
with.
then we have discussion. We were actually, okay?
But a vote to table under Robert's rules means you have to go immediately to the vote. It's not.
yeah,
There is no discussion to go up or down.
there is no discussion on the motion to table. He's correct.
Joe, would you call the roll, please? Joe Schramm?
Yes. Thor, Ackley?
Let me be clear.
Yay.
The motion is to table. So a yes will table, a no will continue the discussion.
Yay.
Sherry
Motion.
Ackley?
Nay.
Dan Darren?
Aye.
John Edwards?
Yes.
Tom Healy?
Nay.
Cynthia Isherwood?
Nay.
Mike Janik?
Yay.
Judy Jones? Judy
Nay.
Jones? I'm sorry, what was that?
Nay.
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 Joe Souza
And I'm a no.
and Joe Schramm. I'm a no.
You have
Dave Perry.
Yeah.
Nay.
I'm sorry, did I miss one? I'm sorry, Dave Perry?
Yay. Yes.
The motion fails.
Well, unfortunately, the time we just spent doing the vote, we could have probably finished the discussion because I was ready to.
What was the vote total?
Hold on, I'm counting. That's what I'm checking right now. 1,
Sorry, I just
3, 4,
stickler for rules, especially with the solicitor on.
2, 3, 6 to 4. Well, wait a minute. Let me count this again. 1, 2, 3, 6. 6 to 5. Sorry.
Point of order, we have 11 tonight in attendance.
Yes, our entire committee is in attendance tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'll just ask, does anybody else have anything to say about this proposed resolve before we move on? Or should we just put it off until next meeting for more discussion?
Jay Edwards has his hand up, Chair.
John.
Please, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the question I have is for Mr. Marcello. You talked about how the resolution and the resolve are essentially the same thing. The resolution or the ordinance does have an expiration date on it unless renewed by the council. So has it been renewed by the council? And if not, is it not expeditious for this committee to put something forward, essentially mirroring what the council has already put forward?
It has not been changed by the council. It's under discussion by the council. I think it's going to be at the next agenda meeting. They did propose it. So, but the ordinance is in place now, right? And it's presumed to be legal, and it's presumed to be valid, and it's presumed to be constitutional and in compliance with your charter. That's what the law does. It presumes that when a council acts, they do so legally. So, and so that's the law. That's where we are now. So I don't know what the council will do. I have no idea if they're going to continue it, repeal it, or extend it. But again, they're pretty much identical. I mean, they do exactly what Mr. Souza wants to do. I guess he just disputes about whether it should be voted by other people or by the council. I guess that's where the dispute comes from.
John, you got your
Mr.
hand up.
Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would just suggest that we push this off until a future agenda once the council has decided to act or not act. And then I think that it would be incumbent upon us, if the council does nothing and the ordinance is going to expire, that we should move forward with the resolution.
Is there anybody else?
Question.
Sherry? Oh, I'm sorry. Mike, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, what is the sunset date for this? When does it expire?
June 30th of 2021.
The end of this fiscal year.
Thank you.
Sherry, you're muted. Sherry, you're muted.
I know, sorry, I was looking for my button. So Mr. Marcello, does one outweigh the other as far as is the ordinance held? That was going to be my question. Is that above a resolution, or is one higher than the other in the order of them?
Well, resolution, from my understanding, would be a year-to-year thing. Ordinance stays in place until it's repealed or modified.
Okay.
Especially a budget resolution, right? It only goes for the next.
Yeah, I mean, I know that. I just was wondering if that, if we write a resolution and there's an ordinance, and the order, what he was saying, it's basically stating the same thing that the ordinance did. I didn't know if one proceeds, or if one kind of cancels the other out as the is it more important, is something voted on by the voters, does that override an ordinance?
Well, the resolution is only good for a year. An ordinance is forever until it's changed. So, an ordinance would outlay a resolution. Ordinance is binding upon the town until it's repealed or changed or amended.
Right.
Resolution is binding for only that 1 year until the next fiscal year when the voters meet at a financial town, when they have their budget vote.
Okay.
But, all the issues that you raised, Mr. Souza, and the concerns, I think that also being mirrored by the town council. So I think you're probably getting to the same place. You just may not agree how to get there, but you're getting to the same place.
Well, my biggest disagreement is the fact that I think that they're not in compliance with the charter. I don't think they have the authority to put forward an ordinance when, section 1214 is clear. The word all means all.
But that issue is not gonna be resolved by the budget committee.
No, it may end up in court. I don't know, but just another legal battle, I guess, because it just seems to me it makes more sense to do it and resolve and get the people involved than to try to dictate from the council. Are we done with this now? Does anybody else have any questions for the solicitor?
I think we're good. I mean, it's going to be a legal battle. We can always just put more money in the legal defense budget.
Talking about cutting the legal budget, we're never going to be able to do that. So at least he's safe there. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
Do you guys need me for anything else, or can I go eat my late dinner now?
No, thank you for coming. And
Call me anytime. You have my email address, I think, on the letter, if you have any questions. But good luck. It's good luck putting together a budget. It's not going to be an easy task this year for anybody. So
We can call you, but we can't do it together, right?
you can send me an email. Correct. Yeah.
Now go buy
You
some
can call
game
me.
stuff after hours.
And you can call me too. But not as a group, right? Have a good
Well,
night,
it sounds
everybody.
like you don't want us to call you late for dinner.
Not tonight, anyway. Thank you. Good luck, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Agenda item 6. Has everybody received copies, 3 sets of minutes, and had a chance to review them? Yes, John.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for 114 regular and joint meetings and 121 meeting.
Second.
Are there any objections? Are there any objections?
Motion for unanimous consent.
Second.
So moved. The motion passes. We're on to item.
Well,
What?
that
Got an
sounds like
objection?
consent.
That was an objection.
Item 7, revote on number for debt service. Joe?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion, hold on, to approve. I put this on the agenda because last week, sorry, John, I am so used to being with Jay.
No worries.
John Edwards he moved to vote on the entire group, but we actually need to vote on a number. And so my motion is to move 4,737,263 for debt services.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Is there any discussion?
Motion unanimous consent.
Second.
Dave? I see Dave Perry's lips moving. Is he talking?
Who made the
Muted,
motion
Dave.
for unanimous consent?
I did, seconded by Dan Darren.
Okay.
Hey, I just have a question. That number doesn't match what I had, and I know I missed last week's meeting. I had COVID. Very sorry.
We're working on
4,000.
the January 15th budget. Are you on the January 15th?
I believe I am. Okay, what was that number? Bottom number? 4,000 what?
4 million.
Sorry, it's
I mean, billion.
4,737,263. 263.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And the motion carries. That was for $4,737,263.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. There presumably no objections. Sorry, there were presumably no objections.
Yes.
Yes, there were presumably no objections.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Item 8. Possible vote on resolutions carried over from date clarification from treasurer and solicitor. So we're going to go back through the resolves again and vote each one with correct. I think we got stuck on,
Do we have Chris Cotta for the date?
got stuck on number 3.
You do.
So we voted 1 and 2. Do we need to vote those again? Sherry?
I don't think we need to, I think we do need to vote those again because the date, you guys decided on the date, but I just think that to clarify the date and to re-vote on them is probably the best thing to do. And if we can correct the date and vote on them all together, that's one thing I forgot to ask, but I think we should be able, maybe John Edwards can tell us, but I think we should be able to change the date and then, or maybe Chris can, and then vote on all of them as amended with the date.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I'd just like to ask the solicitor, or not the solicitor, I'm sorry, the administrator, for the clarification, if the date should be bumped up by a year across the board, or if there were any outliers that need to be bumped up by 2 years.
So when I talked to Denise, she did some research. She had to go all the way back to the May 19, 2018 town FTR, and it was for the 2019 budget. And that was the year that Mr. Katz had suggested, because these resolutions did not have dates on them prior to this. And that the thought was, at the time, was to ensure that as you were voting on the the year in which you were doing, so you were looking for FY 2019 at the time, you would carry forward at the end of FY 19, which would be 6/30/19, into FY 20, anything that was remaining at the end of that year. You wouldn't go back to the year that the FTR was in. So in 2018, in May, when you were voting, the resolutions to already carry that money was done the year before. So you're always going to be forward-looking. So when you're doing the budget year that we're putting forward now will be FY 22. Everything that you'd be asking for at the end of FY 22 would be carried into FY 23. FY 21 has already been voted on to go into FY 22.
So if I'm understanding you correct, Mr. Cotta, the dates that were sent are correct for the prior fiscal year across the board. There are no errors.
They are correct. That's
Okay.
another issue. I don't think that some of them are. So I don't know if you want to do multiple resolutions to make sure that whatever's left in the end of FY 20 should have been carried into 21, 21 into 22. But that was the thought process behind what these resolutions should be doing.
One more follow-up question, Mr. Chair. This is just a preliminary vote, correct? This isn't final.
Yeah, all of our votes have been preliminary.
Okay. Mr.
That's
Chair,
pretty
if it would please you, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Budget Committee FY 2020 or 22 resolutions 1 through 7, altering the dates where it is earmarked for 2021 to 2022 and for 2020 to 2021.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Is anyone opposed?
I'll make a motion for unanimous consent if the chair pleases.
I'll second.
So can you want a discussion, but because the 2020 year has already been audited and closed, or will be closed by the end of this month, you can only do the end of FY 2021 into 22.
Correct, Mr. Cotta. That was my motion.
You work on the 22 budget in its entirety, so anything at the end of 22 would go into 23.
Correct. So anywhere within this budget committee document, my motion was to change 2021 to 2022 and 2020 to 2021.
You can't do 2020.
But what I'm saying is, so for instance, on resolve number 4, as an example, at the end of 2021 shall be carried into the same account for 2022, as opposed to 2020 and 2021.
As opposed to, okay, that's
correct.
All right.
So it's just updating the dates to reflect the next fiscal year.
Okay.
I just want to mention for anybody who is watching this, perhaps not watching it live, that all of this is listed on the town's website. You can also obtain copies through the town clerk. Okay.
Don, would you be willing to update that when we're ready to help me with updating this to make sure that those dates are right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So the motion carries.
Where are you?
We're done in minutes. Okay. So we're to number 9, right? Yeah. Okay, discussion and vote on accounts. 1030, Board of Canvassers, page 4.
Is the town clerk with us, Joe?
Nope.
I don't believe so, but
Wait a
we
minute,
heard
yes,
from
she is.
her. We heard from her last meeting
Yeah,
on.
she's here. I'm bringing her over.
Oh, okay, she's coming in. Okay, I see her.
Hi,
Somebody.
I think I was in the waiting room.
Hey,
Um,
Joan.
Hi. I do have, I think I mentioned the last meeting that I was going to do some more research. So on the Board of Canvassers budget, the election account is a restricted account. And at the current time, there's about 70,000 in that account. And even with the March 2nd election, that will probably only reduce by 15 or probably about 20,000. It'll be down to about 50,000 in that account, which I think would be sufficient going forward. So I would like to reduce the election dollars to 0 instead of 15,000. Because I think last year's budget, the town clerk requested 50,000 and what actually passed was 65,000. So I think there was a little bit more in there than was needed. Plus we did get some grant money for the general election of a little over 6,000. And with the March 2nd election coming up, we have around 4,000 in grant money to assist with that election. So I don't want to get too much money in there. We really don't have any election next year. So I don't I think there's plenty of money there will be plenty of money in that account at the end of this fiscal year that you don't need to,
Joan, can
But
you
it-
repeat what the number you said you wanted to reduce that to? I'm sorry.
right now I have in the budget 15,000 for the election account,
Yeah,
and I would really would like to reduce that to 0.
okay.
That's
That's
account
account number-
1030-6329.
It's on page 4 too. I did put that in our agenda for,
Anybody who's doing it electronically, it's line 114 in the Excel.
So that would make the total for the Board of Canvassers, account 1030, a total of $8,100.
Mr. Chair,
you
Yes,
want to,
John.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the account 1030 and subsequent sub-accounts in the amount of $8,100.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second to
Motion for unanimous consent.
Second.
Are there no complaints?
Who seconded that?
Mr.
Mike.
Janik,
Motion carries.
page 4.
Account number 1040, Town Hall Operation Expenses, page 4.
That's actually under the town administrator.
It is. That was my mistake. And it actually, yeah, it's on page
Okay.
4.
We'll move on then.
Mr. Chair, motion to take item 9C and 9D out of order in place of 9B.
Okay. Second,
I'll second.
no complaints?
Second.
Okay. See, the motion carries. Okay, so we'll start at C. Count 1100, Financial Town Referendum, found on page 6.
That's actually on page 5.
Yeah, I made some mistakes. Sorry.
Line 146 on the spreadsheet.
Any questions on that? That was level funding.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, John.
motion to approve account number 1100. It's Financial Town Referendum for $11,500.
Oh, there it is, okay.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Motion carries.
Can you repeat the number real quick? Because I don't have it open to that yet.
Yes, 11,500.
Okay.
You keeping up, Tom? Give us a nod. Okay.
Did we, and we had sorry, you'll have to help me out here. And we had a unanimous consent as well for that.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, 9D, count 1970, Probate Court, page 6.
Line 181 on the spreadsheet.
Again, with the probate court account 1970, it's level funded from last year. Sherry?
I was gonna, it's not a question. I was just gonna say, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve account number 1970 probate court for $12,100.
Second.
We have a motion and second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Quick question.
Go ahead, John.
Sure. So I'm looking at the 1920 actuals. It looks like they spent $395 on program and software, but the request is for $600. I'm just curious for the difference there. If there was
I
a
know
software increase or
There was an increase in the software cost.
okay. Thank you.
Again, is there any objections?
Motion for unanimous consent.
Second?
Second.
Any objection? Any further conversation? Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Bye.
You're not
Good
doing,
night, Joe.
you're not doing 1010?
It's our privilege. No, we're
And
1040 now.
1010 was taken care of at the last meeting.
Okay.
That was the one we actually got on the agenda last time.
Oh, okay, all right, sorry.
All right,
Okay.
so we'll move
Have a good
forward.
night.
Now it's your
9,
turn, Mr. Administrator.
count 1040, town hall operating expenses, page 4.
Line 119 on the spreadsheet.
Chris, I have a
Sure.
question.
Go ahead.
It's all right. It's me. Chris, we're looking for an increase on the heat and electric. And I'm seeing that based on 2019, 2020 actuals, it is an increase. What does that due to? I would imagine there's been less activity at town hall, so maybe there should have been less electric used, less heat done. But it could be, the cost, the expenses of buying both of those utilities.
So there hasn't been any less amount of use. I mean, it still gets used. We're still here every day.
But
Actually, I'm here on the weekends and most nights, so it gets plenty of use. But it is probably more attributed to the fact that the rates went up.
okay.
Yeah. Let's not forget who's in the White House now.
I have a question as well.
Go ahead, John, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So looks like 1920, we used about $3,000 worth of telephone. Any reason for the decrease in that line item? Year over year?
Other than the fact that we tried to consolidate some lines, I think we did consolidate a couple of lines. So I think we're trying to hope that we can bring this in a little bit lower than where we were, but they did go to IP telephony but it did increase the monthly charge, but it did get rid of some of our long distance. So hopefully that, we can stay within budget.
We were paying long distance charges
Years ago, yeah.
like last year?
Like last year and the year before. We don't do a lot of long distance anyhow, but
What phone company were you using that they're charging us long distance rates?
I don't think the town wasn't on IP telephony at all. So they were doing whatever service they had, whether it was, I don't know what product was through Cox that they used, but it wasn't IP telephony. So that has now changed.
All right. So we're talking about we're talking about 2021, 2022 budget request as opposed to a 1985.
Yeah, well, it's actually
Okay.
less. There are still a lot of entities out there on like Centrix lines, and there are a whole litany of lines that are out there that are still available to be used, but it doesn't, I'm assuming when Jan did this, it was to actually generate some savings. So I don't have enough history here I haven't gone back and looked at all the records.
Point of information or question, could that couple of,
Hold on, David. Dan had his hand up. I'll go next to
Sorry.
you. Go ahead, Dan, real quick.
could that couple of hundred have been installation charges or service charges?
No, there would have been some charges to do it, but like I said, I believe we're hoping to reduce the cost, not increase the cost. So
Dave Perry?
Yeah, Chris, I just have a question on building maintenance.
Yep.
I see we used $53.99 back in 1920. What are we going to be doing to the building? I know the inside's all.
Believe it or not, there's some roofing work that needs to be done again.
Okay,
There is some modifications to some of the offices that we're going to be doing in here, and there is some updating that needs to be done. There is just, this building has quite a few issues that need to be resolved. I'll give you an example. There's some issues down in the boiler room that we're working on right now. That some of the circulators weren't working right. Some of the pipes are clogged. So we're continuing doing maintenance on an old structure.
Okay, that's good enough for me.
Chris,
Sure.
have we replaced the roof over the vault?
Yeah, we did,
I know we did the roof above the town hall, but I
I'm
didn't know.
gonna
if we
say,
did-
yeah, we did, but it was back when I was on the budget committee, Joe, so it was probably like 2008, 2005, somewhere back then. It's if I remember, right, it's a rubber membrane.
Yeah. Yeah, because I thought we did everything except for the vault when, that was back when,
So
She's-
at that time, when
10 years ago,
this
almost.
roof was done, like the shingles on the roof,
yeah,
there was, that membrane had probably been like 10 years or 12 years old. So there wasn't a need to replace it at that time. We're not looking to replace that. I will say some of the shingles on the roof have come off.
Oh, yeah?
This place is pretty high up, and we get a lot of wind damage up here. And we have some leakage that's coming in between the two petitions here. It's not really from the roof, it's from the membrane that comes up, it goes between the membrane and the wall. So we're trying to seal that off as well too. It's right over the clerk's office.
Yep.
So the roof part of it's fine. It's where the membrane goes up the wall. When you get a big snowpack, it lays against it and melts and comes down behind it.
Yeah.
So I think we just got through trying to fix some of that, but there is some repairs around this building that need to be done.
Sean,
And there's a walkway out front that also needs to be done as well, ADA issue.
John Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve item 1040, Town Hall operating expenses for $27,700.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any objections? Any more comments? Do we need to
Motion
call-
for unanimous consent, I guess.
Second.
Well, if we have no complaints and the motion, we'll have unanimous consent. There's no complaints, the motion moves. All right. The motion carries, I'm sorry.
1620.
All right. Agenda item 10. Tom, you keeping up? Thumbs up? Okay. Discussion, vote on account 1620, boards and commissions, page 14 on the docket.
It's actually page 15, another
Page 15
mistake.
on the docket, I'm sorry.
Not your fault. I misnumbered some of them.
Someone just give me the account number for one of the accounts.
It's 6210 for all of them. And they're 8,000, 8,010, 8,015, 8,020. That's boards and commissions. It is on page 14.
Oh, it is on page 14.
Okay, yeah, because civic approach.
I think it's the next one that's, yeah.
Yeah. Boards and commissions. Are there any questions?
Yeah, my question is, why did the budget committee costs go up? What are we doing different this year?
Zoom?
Zoom, I
So-
would think.
Yeah, well, it also,
Was-
we had asked for the money for the secretary. Yeah, so that was costing us money. I'm more than willing to take the paycheck. Yeah, no, seriously, we did ask for the secretary, and I'll pick my check up Friday.
Point of information, just a quick question. Is that these amounts include our annual summertime clam bake for the budget committee?
No.
No,
But we did get a pay raise this year.
I mean, Chris, we can lower that because of the secretary. I think
Yes.
Andrew Rise said that it was, I think he said his bill was around 1,400 for the budget committee meetings for Zoom last year.
Okay.
But I do think that we're going to continue to have problems with someone wanting to do the secretarial work, and I won't be here, so.
John,
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve all the items under 6210 for $12,200.
have a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
Yes, why do we not drop something off of the budget line item? we're not gonna spend it in, Andrew's at 1,400, should we drop it down 500?
We may need some clerical help next year. I think,
This is, well, since my take, Mr. Janik, is that because this is for the following budget cycle, so it'll be another budget committee. So God forbid somebody resigns or something like that, and we do have to bring in some help from the clerk's office. We should have some dollars allocated just in case.
And I'm still waiting on my signing bonus.
well, I mean, it's not a coffee fund. It's actually to help pay for the administration of our, to keep us in compliance with open meetings. So we had a motion, we had a second. Is there any more discussion?
Motion for unanimous consent.
Thank you. I was waiting on you.
Second.
Are there any objections? Motion carries.
250.
We'll move on to agenda item 11. Discussion vote on 6250 civic appropriations, page 15, I believe.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So my question is related to account 7758, the Newport County Women's Resources. It looks like last year there was no request, but this was funded. So I'm just curious if somebody can enlighten me as to.
I'll check with Mary Lou, but I believe they did put a request in this year. And I think there might have been an oversight from last year, but I'll double check with that.
John, I have the answer to that.
Wonderful. I knew you would.
Don't you remember that what we did was we went through all the accounts last year and they had requested $1,000 and never took it. And it went back into the general fund. So we notified them that they never took the money and they never got back to us. So we bottom lined them. So I'm not sure why it says 500 now, but that's what happened in 2021. Anyone who never took the money that we gave them, we got rid of the money because it just went back into the general fund and we taxed people for this and there was no reason.
Point of information, that was a historical society.
No, that was the
Women's resource.
Oh, the women's resources.
Yeah, we gave them the money, we allocated the money and it stayed in that fund. So it ended up going back in the general fund. And
sorry.
We went through all these accounts. Like actually, we took off some accounts that historically never took the money because we're taxing people for this to go into the general fund.
And with COVID, I'm going to guess a lot of meetings didn't take place that might have and things like that.
They might have requested that 500. I'm not sure.
No, they actually requested 2,000 and I cut it to 500.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry.
I guess they realized they didn't get the money last year.
They did, but I think I looked at this, that it was going to be a tight year and I didn't know the rationale as to why it was zero. So that's why I did it. In your binders, you'll find that there is a request on November 20th for $2,000.
John?
So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, again, I know we're probably going to dive into this at a later date, but I'd like to advocate for an increase to the garden club because that's one area where, we do see a positive impact on the community and they desperately need the resources. So I would personally advocate for increasing the $500 to $1,000. And if we're going to take it from somewhere else, within this line item, I'd be okay with that.
I'd like to ask, can we go back up to the top, because I don't know if Denise, I've been on the budget committee long enough to know, but I'd like to know from Denise what exactly, I've talked to a couple people and I haven't been able to get an answer as to what the money we allocate in civic appropriations for visiting nurses actually, I know they visit seniors in the in Tiverton, but normally insurance companies pay for visiting nurses. So I was wondering, either Chris or Denise, if you know exactly what this money gets utilized for in Tiverton.
There's been a huge discussion about this, Sherry, as you know. Yes, insurance companies do pay for people who have insurance. This is a very small amount of what they spend every year. And this is what they ask for help. And I think they use it for resources for people that have needs that insurances don't pay for.
That's what I was wondering. Okay.
Yeah, the visiting nurses do a lot, and some of it is not billable, or actually there's co-pays and all of that. This is a very, this is a minute, this is like a little stipend for them.
Yeah, I had talked to some seniors that actually had, don't have any coverage. So I know that they are using this. I just wanted to kind of advocate that in the past I've gone back and forth asking questions, but I didn't know if you happen to know how they actually use it.
That's how I think they use it, for people in need who can't afford the services.
And I'll say, while I'm talking, East Bay Community Action is who does Head Start, and that's our community food bank for Tiverton, for those people on the committee that are new that don't know. They do a lot. They have a large classroom of children that they support the community in many ways. And through COVID, they've really, stepped up to help the community. And the only other one that the Historical Society, are they still there?
Yes.
Okay. Them and the Veterans Plot, the people that take care of the cemeteries do a wonderful job of taking care and doing all that stuff. The fire and rescue, I think we have to, because that's part of that training, isn't it?
It is.
Okay. So those were the only things I wanted to mention, so that, people that may not know can hear why those amounts might be in there. That's it.
John, let me just 1 second. I'll go.
Sure.
Just from personal experience, for years we've debated, not giving charity, but I've had personal experience with visiting nurses. I wouldn't have the teeth in my mouth today if it wasn't for the East Bay community back when I was a kid going to the dentist there. These organizations that actually help people in Tiverton. And I know it's money out of our pockets. But these organizations actually do things for people in this town. So I'm going to support it, even though I'd like to cut it out, but I just know that these services are needed for so many in our town.
Here, and bravo, Dan, Darren.
John, go ahead, John.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve items, all the items under 6250 for the amount of $14,000, which represents an increase of $500 to the Garden Club.
Second that.
1450.
14,000 even.
Okay. Well, it's 13,550. So you're
Oh,
adding.
sorry, 14,050. Yes, you're right. Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Sherry has her hand up.
I'd like to amend. I'd like to amend that motion. So I have to do the numbers real quick. I was going to say reduce the Newport County Women's Resource and to zero, and move that money to the Garden Club.
So then it comes out to 13,550. It's the same number.
Yeah, it's just moving the money.
You're just moving it from one to the other.
Do we have a second to the amendment?
I'll second.
Judy Jones. We have the number, Sherry?
I'm trying to get it. I think
13,550.
13,550 was zero for the Newport County Women's Resource, but $1,000 for the Garden Club instead of 500.
Just point to question. If I vote present on this, is that an objection?
We're going to vote on the amendment first.
Right. What I was asking is a point of order. If I vote present on the amendment, will that make it not unanimous?
Voting present doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
I have no position on this, but
If you're going to abstain, you really have to have a reason to abstain.
You can vote no, yes, or abstain.
I mean, you should have a reason if you're going to abstain.
okay. May I ask then, is it the sense of the rest of the committee to take the money from this women's resources account and put the garden club? Is there general agreement with that? I think that's the same question.
I'm going to tell you that I don't agree, even though, and the reason is I know what the Women's Resource Center does. So, I mean, it's $500.
We move this to a vote, please.
Is there any other questions? All right, we'll vote on the amendment first. Sherry, would you please read your amendment?
Yes, so my amendment is to move $500 from Newport County Women's Resources to the Garden Club to increase that amount from 500 to 1,000, and to approve the total account amount 6250 for, and you said it was 13.5, right?
50.
13,550.
13,550.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Well, you had a motion and a
We
second.
already had a motion in a second.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Judy made, okay. We have a motion, and a second. We're voting on the amendment. Would you please call the roll, Sherry?
yep.
Again,
Nope,
yes,
I'm
we'll
getting it.
approve the
I'm getting
amendment.
it. Hold on.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to call?
Mr. Chair, okay. Chair, yes or no? For the amendment? Did you
I think
disappear?
Joe may be frozen.
I'm sorry, were you asking me?
Yeah, you first. Yes or no on the amendment?
I'm going to say no.
Okay. Joe Schramm,
I'll say yes.
I'm a yes. Dora Ockery,
Yes.
Dan Darren,
No.
John Edwards,
No.
Tom Haley,
No.
Cynthia Isherwood,
Yes.
Mike Janik,
No.
Judy Jones,
Yes.
and Dave Perry.
No,
So it's
motion
6-5.
Yeah, the motion fails, and you move on to the original one that John.
John, would you read your motion, please?
Yes, sir. So the motion was to approve 6550 civic appropriations, all the underlying accounts in the amount of $14,550, which represents a $500 increase to the Garden Club from 500 to 1,000.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
$14,050.
I'm sorry, $14,050. My bad.
Was there a second?
I'll
we already
second
had
that,
a
Mr. Chair.
second. It was a
Who
second.
seconded?
I did, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We have a motion and a second.
Point of order on the 14,000. It's at 12.2 right now, and if we increase the garden club, that would make it 13.7. Am I wrong?
No.
No, $14,050.
But
The
am I
amount
looking-
right now is 13,550. It's not, which
That's
is
the 2020 budget.
500 to the Garden Club makes it 14,050.
All right, I must be looking at the wrong iteration of the budget.
So just because there was an amendment to take 500 out of the Women's Resource Center, it failed. So that 500 stays there. So I think you reduced it.
To me, it looks like 12,200, but I may be looking at an iteration.
Is it January 15th, 2021?
Correct.
Well, then it's 13,550. That's what everybody else has.
Are we
Oh, no,
ready?
he's looking at Wait a second. What is he looking at?
I don't know.
It says January 15th, 2021, department head request. So
You're on page 15,
I don't know what page I'm
where it
going
says
through.
grants and help.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. He's looking at 6210 boards and commissions. It's one down.
I'm sorry. Wrong. My mistake.
6250.
Dan, I did the same thing. I just hit enable edit on my spreadsheet and it popped me up to that one. So
I do this fine thing. What's the number again? Sorry.
it's 6250 civic appropriations, accounts 7754, 7756, 58, 60, 62, 66.
754. Okay.
And the motion was for $14,050.
It's what is the major
Line 534 on the spreadsheet.
534. Sorry, I apologize. I'm easily confused.
It's been
All
a
right,
long
you
day.
ready for a vote?
534.
All right, I'll ask Joe Schramm this time to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thor Ackley,
Yes.
Sherry Ackley,
Yes.
Dan Darren,
Aye.
John Edwards,
Yes.
Tom Healy,
Yes.
Cynthia Isherwood,
Yes.
Mike Janik,
Yes.
Judy Jones,
Yes.
Dave Perry. Dave Perry.
He was a yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. Joe Souza
And I'm a yes.
and Joe Schramm, yes.
Wow, could have just said unanimous consent, John. All right. The motion carries.
Can someone tell me who seconded that original motion? Was it Mike Janik or Dan Darren? It doesn't matter. I'm gonna start.
Dave Perry.
Dave Perry. Okay,
Yeah, that was Dave.
thanks.
We ready to move, Tom? You all set? Okay, I don't want to get ahead of you, so. Number 12. Discussion vote on count 6200, Economic Development Commission, page 14 on the docket.
Mr. Chair.
Question? Go ahead, John.
Sorry, I was going to make a motion to approve account 6200 for $500.
I have a second.
Who seconded?
Was there a second?
Somebody did.
Oh, no, it was the chair asking for a second.
Oh,
I'll
I'll
second it if nobody else does.
All right.
put
Dan Darren.
Thor down this time. He hadn't gotten any airtime tonight.
No, that's good.
All right, this is the Economic Development Committee. For those that don't know what the Economic Development Committee does, they're a small group in town that look to help the town's economic situation. They've done some pretty good work in the past. They also try to help small businesses when they can to get through the red tape. So it's for $500, I think we get a pretty good deal. So we have a motion, we have a second. Are there any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, John.
You listen, I understand that this is a tight budget year. This is something that I hope that future budgets will look to expand their resources because quite frankly, we have a distribution problem between business properties and residential properties in this town. And this is one way that we can help lure new businesses to come to Tiverton. And I think that the EDC needs all the help that they can get financially so they can go out and recruit new businesses to move here to town. Right now, it's just some volunteers, but I think with some, in future budgets with appropriate funding, they might actually be able to move the needle on the property tax distribution and make it more equitable for everybody in town.
Here.
With that, you will make a
John, you
motion.
froze. John, we didn't catch the last 10 seconds of what you were
Sorry.
saying.
I just said that I think that they should be that with more resources, it would be a more equitable distribution between taxes in this town, between property, residential properties and business properties. So
Are there any objections to this item?
Move for unanimous consent.
Second.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
Hold on. So for $500, I really haven't heard of this commission. I don't know exactly what they do. I understand the purpose. But for $500, how effective are they?
I think the
Somebody
$500,
enlighten me.
from what I understood in the past, the $500 was to help them with clerical, or if they need a,
No, they have mailers they send out. They promote materials. So they do have some supplies and things. So,
Yeah.
and they meet very regularly, and they do have quite an agenda that they deal with. So,
Yeah, this was also a huge discussion item when we went through the comprehensive community plan. There's a number of things that they're responsible for actually putting together, and it's not just going out and finding new businesses to come here to town. It's also taking a look at existing ordinances, finding ways that we can improve it for a more business friendly climate, and working with places like planning and zoning to find efficiencies so that the process to get a new business up and running in town is smoother. So
I put on the comprehensive plan too.
Yeah, they also did extensive work on the comp plan as well. There was a couple of sections that they were actively involved in.
Yeah, so.
they're
that's-
very well, group. They work very hard.
Yeah, no, that's a great explanation. I was not aware of what they were doing. I hadn't heard of them. I'm aware of the Fall River EDC and the Newport County EDC. I hadn't heard of the Tiverton one. And having said that, I'm prepared to go to vote.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Dave.
I would really like to know what they've done for this town. Being on the planning board for the last 4 years, I haven't seen anything that came forward from economic development. And I think what we got to do is really, like John said before, and this is not the time or place for this, but things that get stopped along the way between the planning board, the organization, the departments, letting things into this town that we should. And that's all I'd like to know what they've done.
Well,
Mr. Chair.
Denise had her hand up, so I'll go to Denise first, please.
Dave, they worked, the last year and a half, they worked extensively on a brochure about the highlights of Tiverton and the different businesses. I don't know if you ever saw it. It was at Town Hall. It was passed out around to the different supermarkets. They also had a meet and greet once of all the businesses with a speaker there asking the businesses what they could do to help them to promote their businesses. So they have done some things. And like I think Joe said, they worked extensively with certain parts of the comp plan.
John?
I have a question for the administrator related to 6200 as a whole. Town of Tiverton is actually a member of the Newport County. God, why is it escaping me?
League of Cities and Towns.
No, not the League of Cities and Town. The Chambers. I'm sorry, the Chamber of Commerce. Would it be appropriate
Technically,
for? We're not.
Technically, we have not paid dues for them for over 2 years.
Okay. Well, my question was going to be then is under the dues and memberships for that, should that line item be stuck underneath 6200 as opposed to underneath the town administrator's budget? Just a clerical question.
I don't have them in the budget right now at all for Newport County Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
But I will say that it probably is a worthy endeavor to take a look at. I don't know why the rationale was that we didn't continue with them.
I think it was because
we are
it had something to do with, we felt we were closer to the Fall River Chamber of Commerce than we were the Newport Chamber of Commerce.
Well,
We got no help from them on the bridge tolls, and that was a big issue.
So, like I said, I don't know the rationale for it. I will say that our EDC, our Tiverton EDC, has been working very hard and quietly because they try not to announce things prematurely. I will say that they have brought a number of entities for me to look at for the industrial park.
Yep.
I have kind of sheltered them from the discussions with the actual owners of these entities because it takes a private discussion. But I will, as the face of the community, EDC is the entity that people go to when they have a business they want to bring into town. So they do contact that board and commission. In turn, that commission doesn't, send things to me, and we try to work our way through these things. And if it has some merit, I will try to discuss it with the town council to see where we want to go. But the EDC is somewhat very active beyond just comp plans and things like that. They are the face of the community, and that's where a business would ultimately go to. Sometimes they reach out to me directly, but the EDC is a focal point. And they do provide brochures and information about the town. They do a pretty good job about doing all that.
It's amazing we argue more about the $500 budgets than we do.
Yeah, well, it's.
Well, we have a motion for unanimous consent made by me, and I think John seconded it. But
Is there any more discussion? No more discussion, then the motion
Mr.
carries.
Chair, I have one more thing I want to add. Sorry, because it just came to me. The EDC was actively involved, for anybody in the community who does not know this, but they were actively involved in the e-permitting component that went into the building and zoning piece. So anybody who applies for a building permit, that goes through the e-permitting component on our website. That was the EDC was involved in getting that down here to Tiverton.
I remember those meetings. They were there, and they did a really good presentation. You see the work they put into it for free. All right, so
And I used this system last summer. It's very good.
I'm going to say that the motion carries by unanimous consent. Okay, where were we here? Back to the agenda. Item number 13, discussion vote on tax assessor's budget.
that's
Carry
page
forward.
6, count 2020. I didn't put it on there.
Count 2020. Do you have the page?
2120, page 6.
6?
Correct. It's in the middle of the page. 2120, accounts 5100 through 7530.
For Mr. Darren, that's line 192 on the spreadsheet. And myself.
Did we not vote on this the last time? Because I have.
We did not, because the assessor was not present at the meeting. I don't know if he's here tonight.
He is not here tonight.
He
He is. There he is.
Let him in.
He's coming.
Dave Roberts, are you
Hello,
present?
sir. I am present.
Sorry, Dave, I didn't see you. I was looking
Oh,
at the
here I
window.
am.
You're right out there.
Okay, you have the floor.
All right, very good. First, I do want to apologize for not making last week's meeting. I was not feeling so well, so here I am
Okay.
tonight. So thank you for rescheduling. I appreciate it. And considering the late hour, again, my budget's pretty straightforward and simple. The only thing that I do want to comment about the budget tonight is I do want to make an adjustment on the supplies and miscellaneous line item, 7423. The request is for 5,500, and the increase in that was mostly because the copier in my office was going to need replacing. The time has come immediately. It just died last week on us. So we are looking to replace it. And right now I've got a quote for $850. So I'm going to squeeze it out of this year's budget.
Good.
So I would like to reduce that 5,500 down to 5,000. And the only reason why I'm not going to reduce it any further is because we are squeezing some monies out of this year. We are delaying some purchases. So those will have to be made up next year. But other than that, the budget on the operational side is pretty level funded. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any of those.
Are there any questions? John, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve all the items under 2120 tax assessor in the amount of 172,925, which reflects a $500 decrease in account 7423.
I'd like to second that for discussion.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion?
Who seconded
Hey, Perry,
Dave Perry,
you?
and Dave Perry has the floor.
thank you. On salaries, Is that by contract going from 76 to 78.5?
That is not in the contract at this moment. That is a 2% factored raise in there. And the salaries for the clerks, that's part of their contract.
But yeah, just the management director would, that increase should be under the council contingency.
Right, we need,
So let me give you a number. It would go back to that.
Mr. Chair, I can revise the number.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I'd like to revise my my number to 166,517.
It's a $1,908 decrease, right?
Yeah, it's level funding with the
Right.
2020, 2021 because the raise went down under the council contingency,
Right.
and there was a $500 decrease. I'm sorry, I
Can
lied.
you
Hold
read
on.
that number? Yeah.
It's 171,017. So that's a $500 decrease in line item 7423 and level funding from 2020, 2021 on line item 5100. So 171,017.
Right.
Yes, that's correct.
So, let's see, the biggest increase was,
What was that line item decrease for 500 again, John? What was the line item?
That was the supplies and miscellaneous.
7423.
That's what I
Yeah,
need.
7423.
so it
Not that
seems
I
like-
don't think Mr. Robert is entitled is going to get his raise, but we moved all that by policy into the council contingency.
All right, I forgot about that.
Thank you, Mr.
That was
Edwards.
my mistake as well, so.
And since the council president is here, I would encourage her to give you a raise.
You the man.
So
Yes,
John,
sir.
are you amending your
Yes.
motion for that number? Okay.
I'm amending my motion to the total of 171,017.
Dave Robert.
Yes, sir.
Can you please explain GIS web hosting? It seems to be the largest increase in your budget. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, it's contractional. So the GIS has two elements to it. One is the updates that we give them to update our assessor maps on any subdivisions and mergers and any other miscellaneous corrections that we need to make to the assessor maps. The second portion is the actual hosting out on the internet so the public can access that. That is their web hosting fee, and that has seen an increase from the $3,000 to $3,500.
So this has put your office online so people don't have to physically come here. Is that what I'm understanding? Or?
That's one element of it. The other is obviously the assessments. That's a separate website. But yes, the GIS web hosting is for all the assessor maps. People who utilize that for planning, creating a butter list, doing very basic map searches. But through that website, they can also access our revaluation information, our assessment information. And we create layers on there, like there's a layer for historic homes, the zonings on there, the watershed area. So it's a quite useful website.
That's also the property cards too, so you can see a super old picture of your house.
Are there any fees associated with using this site?
No.
Not
The
to
user
the
has no
users.
fees.
Not for the user?
Right.
So there's no
Yeah,
revenue generated from
Joe,
it?
it's like if I might, it's like a satellite view of the town with all of the rest of the other bells and whistles that.
I just wanted to explain to the public what it is, because it's like the largest part of the increase. So
It is, but it gets used very frequently.
I understand. I just wanted to make sure it was clear to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Were there any other discussion? Sherry, you had your hand up?
Nope, I'd just like to make a motion for unanimous consent.
Second.
We have a motion second. Is there any further discussion? Are there any objections? Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Okay, item 14.
So what's your preference? I mean, do you have a preference that you would like? I mean, would you like the police department or fire department to come in next week? DPW is going to be heard next week by the council as well, but
All right, well,
those are big departments, so I don't know what your pleasure is.
well, we agreed to wait for the council to finish reviewing their budget, so where is the council? And I think Denise is ready to speak on that. Denise, please.
All right, Joe, we met with the fire chief and the police chief. We went over every item. We did not take any votes. And the reasoning behind that is we're gonna do DPW on Tuesday. And once we get the big hunk of our capital, which is those 3 departments, my plan was to start to vote on capital at the next budget meeting after we meet with the DPW. Because if you look at our capital, it's mostly all of those 3 departments. We did go over the police budget. We went over the fire budget. I don't know if any of you saw it.
Yeah, we watched.
Do you have any questions for me? As far as the cars, I know you heard that we talked with the chief, the police chief, and there is a grant available to us.
Yeah.
And we are looking into the detail account, which if you remember, we bought a car from the detail account in the past. We just want to make sure that we do it legally without any problems. So we are looking into that. So that line item will go down. I think he requested 3.
I thought I saw that there was a $63,000 grant.
Yes.
Yes, right. And there would be a match.
Dollars in the account for details.
Right, but there would have to be a match from the town, so that's what we were trying to figure out. What our match would be, where we get that money from. The detail account does have enough money in there to buy a car. But at this point, that the car that he's requesting, I'm trying to find it right here. Chris, do you remember how many cars he's
I think
requesting?
it was 5 altogether with the 3 patrol cars.
No, it's 3.
1 dog officer car and
Yeah, well,
Right,
3
right.
frontline cars and then 2 detective cars, I guess,
Right, so we're working on that.
2 admin vehicles. So there were 6 vehicles altogether. 2 admin vehicles, 3 patrol cars, and 1 dog wagon.
Yeah.
Tell you the truth, we are trying to figure out a way to reduce it in this budget, the price, and we asked the chief to give us priorities on all these items, because of course we cannot. It's gonna be difficult to fund this, especially this year. So
Hang on, John.
taking from the other accounts, and we did ask him to prioritize what he would like with everything he's requested, and he's going to be sending that to us. So we haven't quite made a decision on the capital yet, but I can guarantee you we're working on making it less. As far as the fire department, we went over the fire truck. We had a discussion on that. That line item of 900,000 is the total cost. We're working on whether we should, if we do fund this, take a 10-year or a 15-year on it. And that would reduce that 900,000 by quite a bit. I think if we did a 10-year, we figured it would be around, that line item would be about 200,000. So we're working on that also.
It's very similar to the pumper purchase we did where
Right.
it was a 10-year purchase.
Right.
I have a question, Denise.
Hang on, John was up and then you, Mike.
Okay.
I'll let Mr. Janet go first.
Okay, Mike.
Just a education point. If you're going to, if we're going to fund the fire truck with the money this year based on 10 or 15 years amortization, does the following years, 9 through 14, whatever amount of time we do, does that go into debt service? Is that where that'll show up next?
Yeah, recurring payments, right? Time
It
payments.
goes up in the
Recurring payments, if you notice.
3.
What?
It goes into recurring payments on page 3. So you see
Okay.
the
I see it.
backhoe there, the fire department equipment,
Already.
pumper, DPW trucks, things like that, that were bought on time.
I see it. Thank you. Your turn, John.
Thank you.
John,
So my question actually goes to process and what we're doing here. So, if I'm looking at the charter under section 703, line item number 2, it says, the budget committee's responsibility is to review the budget submitted by the town administrator and the school department, in which the committee shall consider both the supporting evidence for each requested budget expenditure and the ability of the town to support the level of service recommended. And I guess my question here is, do we need to bring in members from each department, or should this be the administrator who is standing here defending his subordinates in front of the budget committee?
well, my personal, I would rather have the department head come in only because, they're there every day, whereas the administrator would probably have to ask questions and get back to us. So, and my preference would be perhaps to either her next week, the police or fire. I mean, we can get back to them on capital as, decisions go forward, but I think we need to move forward with these bigger departments. We can hear their operating budgets, hear their suggested capital, and then, take a preliminary vote or decide to, table until we get further information. But I'd like to get the police and the fire chief in as soon as possible to speak with us. And I would also ask that any members that can, please watch the town council's budget hearing. They gave a pretty extensive, so if you do have questions, let's get our questions to the administrator prior to our meeting with those department heads, so they have a couple of days to research answers. That'll help them move it along, I think. So that's my suggestion. Anybody else, please?
I just like to say that it really has worked well in the past when we've coordinated this, because the departments that you reviewed tonight, we haven't even looked at yet. So I hope that if the town council has further suggestions, we could come to you and express either our concerns on those line items or anything that we felt should be changed. Is that all right, Joe?
Well, our idea was to put together a preliminary budget so we can get a handle on where we're going as far as an increase or.
Perfect.
So it's for our own, to get our house in order. And we certainly will welcome anytime you want to come to our meeting and bring up, and if you want to get on the agenda, please get a hold of Sherry and let us know you want to be on the agenda for, so that we're, but
Sherry and I
have every intention of working with the council on everything.
Sherry and I spoke, and I think she's going to put me on the agenda every Thursday. So if you did have any questions for me, or I can discuss different items that we went through, that would be helpful too.
Again,
Fire
all questions should be directed through the administrator, except if you're speaking with a town councilor, but all questions to department heads should be directed through the town administrator. And he'll get back to us at the appropriate time with the answers. But and if you do have questions, again, for department heads, let's get them in prior to seeing the department head so he has the answer when he appears before us.
Joe, I'd just like to add one other thing. For those of you that watched our meeting, there was a question about the fire department adding the 2 extra rotating men.
Yes.
And there was a question on whether or not that was contractual and whether we should hold off on that. I'd just like you to all know, and Donna, Councilor Cook was the one that brought it up. And so I went to Tim Cavassa and spoke to him via phone actually tonight. And he said that those 2 rotating personnel would not mean that we'd have to open the contract. As we all know, in a year and a half from now, the contract will be opened again. And because of the legislation on the overtime, anything over 42 hours, we have to pay overtime. Right now, our men are working 48.
Yeah.
So this was the fire chief's way to gradually get these men in before, within a year and a half, we will have to pay overtime for anything over 42 hours. So this was the way for the chief to gradually bring these men in and not have a big financial crunch when it happens. Tim felt that it was perfectly fine if the council and the budget committee wishes to do this. But I do want to say that personally, if we do this, I will suggest that we decrease the overtime in the fire department, because with these two men there, and we are not required to pay overtime over 48 hours, these two rotating men should decrease the amount of overtime, because they'll be there for vacation, they'll be there for leave of absences or any other time that we pay overtime. It won't decrease it by a half, but it will help. So if the council does decide to add these two men, my personal suggestion will be to decrease the overtime for this year.
Yeah, I think we were all just waiting to get a little more information on that too, but to really see the numbers, how it's going to work, because I mean, hiring two people, purchasing all their gear, their training, they get overtime too when they work on the holidays. I mean, so I don't know that two people are going to cost us over 100,000. I mean, 300,000 and over, but
well, we have asked.
We really would like to see the breakdown to see, because I'm thinking long term, you take on more people, eventually you're going to pay them a pension for the rest of their life. So I really would like to see an analysis on that. John, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chair, my comment was just going to be on something you had said earlier about, all communication should funnel through the administrator. Yeah, I would suggest that members of this committee, we actually funnel communication to the chair, and then he can direct those to the administrator. That way it's more effective for, us to collect our thoughts in one spot within the committee, as opposed to inundating the administrator with, possibly the same question about 14 different times.
Well, I understand what you're saying. So, but I don't want to be like the gatekeeper. So I hope, so if Chris doesn't have an objection to that, if Chris feels he only wants to hear from me, but he's still going to get the question anyway, but.
Point of information. I'm sorry, Joe. I'd agree with John. A single point of contact sounds like the way to go. And you can be that bad cop. So.
No, I'm the nice guy.
Joe, one last thing, and then I'm going to go to bed because I have to get up at 4 o'clock tomorrow. But one last thing is, we did ask the fire chief to put together some cost analysis on what this is going to cost us within the next year and a half. The time and a half we'd have to pay versus hiring the men. So he is going to do that, and I believe Chris asked him to do that. So he should have that prepared for us.
I would suggest if you're going to bring either one of those two departments in next week, you bring in the police department.
Okay.
The fire department right now is pretty well inundated with vaccination issues, testing issues, and trying to gather all the data. And where, the council still has to wrestle with this whole proposed concept as to where they want to be with this. So, and we're still working with Labor Council and other things related to some of the requests. It doesn't mean that they're going to get approved. I'm not saying one way or another how that's going to work out. I can't speak for the council, but these are just conceptual proposals at the moment. But I think it would be easy to work through the police department's budget easier next week than it would be the fire department's, because there's so much other moving parts in the fire department right now.
I definitely agree with that.
All right, Chris, I will take your advice, I believe. Does anybody have an objection to that? That we look
Is
at
there anybody else you would like to hear from? I mean, that's a lot asking you to do in one night. I remember doing.
Bring them all.
Yeah.
Well,
Can I weigh in on this?
Go ahead, Sherry.
Okay, so the treasurer and the tax collector had actually said they could come next week.
Bring them too.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, well,
That'll be enough for you, but
you should be able to get through them, any problem.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. I don't, who owns the town council? Is that
I'll
under
do the town council if you want, but that's.
Denise? Okay. But the ones that I had marked down, there were a few, like the planning board. But so if we add police, the police did that video, so if people get the opportunity, they probably won't have, they won't, even if people want to send me the questions and I forward them to you, Joe, put them together to send to Chris, or if you all want to send them to Joe, I'm willing to help if you want to, if you need help getting them.
I'll take them from all of you, but I would prefer it to be coordinated through at least somebody so that their filter is not replicated, but that's fine, but I'll take a question or call from anybody, so.
Well, if people have questions and you want to email them to me, I will forward them. And if it's a duplicate, I will let you know that the question has already been asked.
No problem.
I think if we do that, we probably have enough for,
Yeah,
because
it's only
that's a big
11 of us. How many?
department.
All right, so again, we can look at the police department and several small budgets next week. We've been stacking the agenda pretty
Can you
heavy.
give me 2 small ones first so they don't have to wait to go through the whole police department?
Bring him.
Yes, I would put them on the agenda first.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, thanks. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Denise has her hand up again.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Don't show
Joe, Joe, could we hold off the town council until I speak with the town council and we review the budget?
See you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, I just think I don't want to review a budget.
No. We want to work with you. So that's why we asked you to come. So you can let us know where you are.
What about the planning board? That one's level funded, it looks like so far, and like Denise said, they may change, but the planning board right now can we do that one, 1070?
Yeah. Well, again, if we don't get to all the items on the budget, that's on the docket, that's fine, but I don't want to run out and, so if it moves along as we can probably get to everything.
So I'm going to answer one question for you now because I'll ask it tomorrow, as it relates to like the assessors, when he's going to have his information for you, what time frame, and then we can ask the treasurer about some of the revenues next week. But at least get you an answer as to when he believes he'll have the assessments for you.
John.
I just for everybody who's watching too, I just want to point out that given my spouse's position in the school department, I am waiting on a ethics decision. So I've asked the chair to kick the school committee budget down the road for us before we get there.
I don't think they're ready for you anyhow at the moment.
I just want to make sure I'm out in the open and on video saying that I'm expecting an ethics decision before we have the discussion.
I think you'll be fine with doing whatever you need to do, but I think you'll be fine. But we'll wait to see what your decision comes back with. It is what it is. Okay, are we done?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Well, item 15, I guess we blew right through it without me talking, but
right.
a discussion with the town council president, workshop, police and fire. So I just want to mention that 14 and 15, we discussed together. So we have a motion for adjournment. We have a second.
Yeah, John Edwards seconded.
Okay,
I seconded, yeah. And
Are there
I'm
any objections to?
hands up in favor.
All in favor?